Professor X Wild Reign begins in the Marvel Universe, Episode 91. Mephitos, who is in the Hell Dimension, is already Knight on Earth when he senses the betrayal of Johnny, the evil spirit knight. Johnny, who turned into a ghost rider, did not hunt souls as Mephitos requested. Enraged, Mephitos wants to take back the spirit of vengeance, only to discover that he has lost control of the ghost knight. There is no way to deprive the evil spirit knight of his power. Damn it! Damn it, being caught off guard by this sudden upheaval. Mephitos jumped to his feet frantically, and the furious energy shot around, and I don't know how many low-level demons were shocked to death. He made an agent on Earth. In the end, this agent betrayed himself and became his own enemy. Is this a thing? Who is against me? Mephitos does not think of it as the Ancient One, or Odin. Because there is an agreement between them, as long as the hellish dimension and the human world remain peaceful, they will not interfere with each other. Gui and Odin, it is impossible to suddenly tear up the agreement. Mephitos summons his magic, and he sees Johnny, who has become an evil knight, speeding down the road on a hell motorcycle. The engine let out a furious howl. Just like Johnny 25's heart at this time, anger boiled in his chest. Mephitos further urged the magic. The surrounding scenery seems to go back in time, constantly going backwards. Travel back in time to the moment when Johnny became a ghost rider. Time goes on. When Johnny arrived alone, he borrowed alcohol to relieve his worries. Continuing further, Morpheus saw Charles at the Silver Hand Bar. This is just what happened before Mephitos used his magic to watch. It belongs to an immutable past. It is only the Agamotto eye of the Supreme Venerable that time can be turned back in the true sense. But it is in this immutable past. Charles in the picture suddenly looked in the direction of Mephitos and said, "This is just the beginning." Apparently Charles used a little magic. Mephitos was furious. It turns out that everything is the ghost of Charles Xavier, who plotted against his agent in the world. Not only that, but a mortal actually tried to threaten himself. Abominable. A mere mortal actually dared to provoke the majesty of the great Hell Lord. Mephitos gritted his teeth, anger gushing out of his eyes. He decided to consume his followers on Earth and make demons with powerful magical powers truly descend on Earth through sacrifice. You must know that in Eagle Sauce, there are many such messy evil god believers. Many so-called evil gods are demons, or dimensional demon gods. The devil may also defend his own organization of believers. The dimensional demon gods basically disdained their disciples, and they didn't have any control. But these people will still kneel and lick the evil gods. It's like Charles has seen those Jingri and the like in his previous life. Mainly a slut. At this point, Mephitos needed the believer to sacrifice and deliver a little miracle or revelation. Believers will be like flies that smell the smell, swarming together. The price of sacrifice through death. Let powerful demons descend on Earth without being repelled by the law. Just as Mephitos was giving a revelation to the believers, Charles has come to the border of hell. With him is the secret guest, Liana. The teleportation ability of the secret guest can use the hell frontier as a transit station. But she never stopped at the border of hell. When the secret guest was very young, she awakened the mutant ability, which caused her to accidentally teleport to the hell frontier. Velasco, the demon of the border of hell, imprisons the secret guest and teaches her dark magic. The purpose is to make the secret agent become his own human agent. But years later, the secret escaped from the border of hell after a neglect by Velasco. Since then, the secret visitor has used teleportation skills to use the hell frontier as a brief jump. She didn't dare to stay in this place for too long. Otherwise, Velasco will follow the fluctuations of his soul and find him. Charles asks the secret guest Liana to follow him, which makes the secret guest very scared, including the magical baby dragon Lockheed beside her, who is also nervous and flying. Lockheed is the Muppet dragon that the secret agent wears on his hand. When the secret unleashes the power of dark magic or comes to the frontier of hell, Lockheed reverts to the form of a magical baby dragon. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. Lockheed, don't be afraid, we can deal with that demon. The secret guest comforted the magic baby dragon. The little one is still nervous. In its perception, Velasco is the most powerful demon. In fact, Velasco can only be regarded as a demon with powerful magical powers. In the hell dimension, this demon is like a lord. Ruled by Mephitos. Since Charles came to the hell frontier and borrowed the ability of the secret guest, he definitely couldn't just look for Mephitos. By the way, the hidden dangers on the secret customer's side were solved together. As a payment to a secret client. After all, if he doesn't solve Velasco, he will attack the secret customer first. It's like a time bomb, early blow up and early will blow up. Let me see who's back, my little Liana, it's not a good habit to sneak away. Suddenly, a huge demon with red skin crawled out of the hell magma. He shipped the magma on his body and looked viciously at the secret guest. The secret guest and the magical baby dragon Lockheed all subconsciously shrunk behind Charles. 187. Only then did Velasco notice Charles. Handsome looks do not conform to the aesthetics of the hellish dimension, they prefer hideous muscles, huge demon horns, and if there are many inhuman characteristics on the body. That's perfect. Velasco is such a demon, his exposed upper body muscles are like pieces of iron, full of power. His body was covered with scars that looked like meritorious service medals. Above his head are 2 demon horns that resemble crowns. In addition to this, Velasco has standard, flaming demon wings behind him. If not for an arm eaten by mosquitoes. In the hellish dimension, he is a demon with a shape that can score 90 points. What are you? Velasco asked angrily. As you can see, Liana attends my school and I am now his principal. Charles raised his head slightly so that he could look at Velasco. Hear Charles's introduction. The secret guest couldn't help but pout. She and this principal have only met 3 times. Everything in the school is the care of the Storm Girl, how can he be embarrassed to introduce himself like this? Is it by thick skin? Charles didn't know what the secret guest was thinking, or else he would have corrected her thoughts. Episode 92. Velasco laughed angrily at the tiny little bug in front of him. A small human being, who didn't know how much to eat every year, actually spoke to himself in such a tone. I've made a decision. Velasco straightened his chest and said. I'll eat you first, throw your soul into a flame that burns your soul, and then I'll eat Liana. I once wanted her to be my substitute on Earth, but she rejected my kindness. You know how rare it should be for a demon's kindness, you know? Oh, and that little dragon. It's too small to be a small snack. Lockheed, the magical baby dragon pointed at by Velasco, let out a mournful cry. The flapping of the 2 wings behind him slowed down a lot. It's like a person who is soft in the face of fear, and it has begun to fly unsteadily. Charles thought for a moment and said to the secret guest, close your eyes. Then the next moment, Charles activated the speed of light ability. His ferocious punch shattered Velasco's chest. Another punch followed. Explode into blood. Charles used a magic barrier so that blood would not drip on him. The secret visitor opened his eyes and saw this disgusting scene. Tantra. You knocked out Velasco, I told you to close your eyes. Char said. Do you think I'm a rookie who hasn't seen blood? You might be able to scare Moonstar to cry, but I was locked up at the border of hell when I was 7 years old. The secret visitor gave Charles a middle finger. If you swear again, I will punish you for not speaking for a day. If you do any more indecent movements, I'll keep you standing on the school lawn for a day. Charles said. He felt that a quality education course should be introduced in schools. For example, the secret guest, a thorn like John the Burning Man, should be well educated. And Clarice, the little one, never knew what respect was for himself. And the secret snorted, but did not dare to continue to raise the middle finger. From the border of hell to where Mephitos is, you have to cross the boundless frontier. The hell dimension is also like the earth, with mountains, rivers, and seas. But not ordinary mountains, rivers, and seas. There are towering black peaks that are submerged in the blood cloud, and the entire mountain is composed of peculiar black ore, which can absorb all light. So much so that the whole mountain looks like someone has painted a black ink on the oil painting from a distance. The secret man who flew with Charles said, Lockheed told me that there is a strong demon on that mountain no less than Velasco, and he is called the Shadow King. Charles's heart moved. Shadow King? This is one of the enemies of X in the X-Police comics. The Shadow King is a psionic entity that can possess anyone. I didn't expect this thing to be a demon in the hell dimension. Since it is an enemy in the comics, it is not to be missed when walking by, but it is better to kill the matter. So Charles walked into the mountain. His powerful spiritual power is the most delicious food for the Shadow King. The Shadow King is everywhere in the darkness, and he makes strange and gloomy sounds. Such delicious food, just delivered to the door obediently. I have a feeling that if I eat you, I will become the most powerful demon in the hell dimension. Second only to Lord Mephitos, this kind of devil, which is relatively dirty, is generally instigated. Shadow King is like that. Feeling that eating Charles can become the most powerful demon, he has to add at the end, for fear that Mephitos will hear his voice. In other words, Velasco even openly rebelled against Mephitos. Charles's process of solving the Shadow King did not go well. Because the Shadow King exists in the form of a spirit body, he is immune to physical attacks. Charles's use of psychic power to strangle or the use of the Avada curse, could not directly kill such a huge spirit body. In the end, the Shadow King escaped into the body of the magical baby dragon Lockheed. He originally wanted to get into the body of the secret guest. However, the secret has the property of being immune to all psychic abilities. The Shadow King's escape plan failed, so he could only retreat to the second place and chose Lockheed. Charles can't kill Lockheed to force out the Shadow King. He could only temporarily set up a spiritual cage and lock up the Shadow King inside, and then deal with the Shadow King after his spiritual power surpassed the apocalypse. Leaving the Black Peak, they saw a basin invaded by endless evil spirits. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. It is also inhabited by powerful demons. There is also the Sea of Endless Magma, which is full of flame demons, and a flame demon hundreds of meters high rules the ocean. He is Mephisto's #1 fighter. Charles deliberately provoked the Yen demon and allowed the Yen demon to constantly attack him. Boom. Charles uses energy absorption to charge here. If you change to another demon, you may turn around and run away after realizing that the situation is wrong. There are a lot of such treacherous guys in the hellish dimension. Yen Devil belongs to the other extreme. The degree of a rib is the same as that of Steel Lux. He doesn't know why he can't kill Charles, but it doesn't matter. If you can't die, it means that your attack is not strong enough. So he continued to swing the flame hammer, booming, and smashed into Charles like a hammer. What is Principal Xavier doing? The secret visitor looked confused and asked Lockheed. Lockheed let out 2 childish dragon roars, indicating that he didn't understand either. At this moment, many flame demons pounced on her. These demons who had just crawled out of the magma sea belonged to the lowest level demons, and they could instinctively fear the fierce aura emitted by the flame demons. Therefore, they are all far away from the Yen demon, and it just so happens that the secret guest is also far away. Tantra. A bunch of things that can't be killed, the secret guest scolded with an evil, Zhao's, heart. A low-level demon like this, she didn't know how much she had killed before. Anyway, you can't kill it endlessly. The magic armor was attached to the secret guest, and the soul blade appeared in her hand to judge. Her soul blade cannot cause fatal damage to humans. If it is to cut a person, at most it can only make that person unconscious. If you hit it multiple times, it will only hurt the soul. However, for hell demons or magical creatures, the lethality of the soul blade is beyond doubt. The secret guest is like the scythe of death, and with the magical baby dragon Lockheed, she constantly harvests the flame demons that try to attack her. For those who did not attack her, the secret guests did not care. Because the flame demon can never finish killing. This thing is chopped up and dropped in the sea of magma, and in a few years, a new flame demon will be born. Just as the secret guest was killing these demons, the sky of the hell dimension suddenly cracked. Episode 93, What does it look like when the sky cracks? Before today, the secret guest did not know, and she may have said all kinds of conjectures. But now she saw it. The sky of the hell dimension was filled with boundless blood clouds. At this time, the sky seemed to be cut out of a ravine by a giant sword. This ravine is the most extreme black and has no other color. From inside the ravine, the same black dimensional storm blew out, sweeping through the blood clouds on both sides. Mephithus' demonic true body descended from it. It is about 3 meters tall, and it does not appear particularly tall. Nor is he as burly as Velasco. He was like the most ordinary male demon, with only a pair of demon wings inscribed with obscure charms on his back, which looked slightly special. The terrifying aura exuding from Mephitos, even if they were very far apart, made the secret guest feel suffocated. Lockheed stopped on the shoulder of the secret guest, his head and wings were stretched up, and he did not even dare to breathe. Not to mention those flame demons, they all trembled and did not dare to move. The flame on his body seemed to be extinguished at any moment. Mephitos' eyes were unusually cold, and looking at Charles was like looking at a dead man. 413, he never thought of it. Charles actually dared to run to the hell dimension to send him to death. This is his territory. If it was on Earth, he would have nothing to do with Charles. Just like before he wanted Charles to deal with the Black Devil, Charles refused his proposal, and Mephitos was so hated that he couldn't do anything about it. Back to the hell dimension, it is also a conspiracy to send demons to deal with Xavier's Genius Youth School. Well, now, the Lord has run to the hell dimension. In this place, he can reach the level of a single universe. Even if the celestial god group came to the hell dimension, he was not daunted. Odin comes to the hell dimension, and he can beat Odin out. A mutant, what is it? Balaroka. Mephitos said. Balaroka is the name of the flame demon. When the Yen demon heard Mephitos calling himself, he immediately hammered the flame into the magma, and said in a respectful gesture, "My lord, what are you calling me for? Leave this person to me." Mephitos said. CGDI, Yen demon listened to the great joy, pointed to the Charles urn and said angrily, "Little worm, you are dead, the great lord will personally destroy you." Charles wanted to call him an idiot. But on second thought, this idiot contributed a lot of energy to himself. Forget it, don't scold him. What's more, there are your own students watching from the side, and it's not good to scold people. Charles's gaze fell on Mephitos, and he suddenly thought of a good idea. If you let Mephitos attack him, wouldn't the speed at which he accumulate energy with energy absorption be greatly improved? Anyway, Charles knew from the beginning that it was impossible to destroy Mephitos by hitting the hell dimension. At most, teach Mephitos a lesson. Let Mephitos be jealous of his own strength and prevent him from continuing to use insidious means to find trouble. Since that's the case, then let Mephitos attack himself. 2 birds with 1 stone, 2 birds with 1 stone, 2 stones with 1 stone. At the thought of this idea, Charles couldn't help but smile. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. Mephitos saw the smile on Charles's face and, not knowing why, had a bad premonition. Just as he frowned, Charles took the lead in speaking. "Mephitos, how about I come to negotiate a deal with you? I will stand still and let you attack me, and if your attack satisfies me, I will leave the hell dimension. If I'm not satisfied, I'll start killing from the stupid big guy below and kill all those powerful demons in the hell dimension." Although in the hell dimension, demons will continue to be born, and there will be new demons with powerful magical powers. But such a loss, I think hundreds of thousands of years, cannot be recovered. What kind of deal did Mephitos think Charles was proposing? Stand still and let yourself attack? Hee. That's it. It is also known as the strongest brain on Earth. Stupid mutant, you don't have a chance to leave the hell dimension. Mephitos laughed angrily. Charles dislikes when people swear at all, especially when they scold themselves. Mephitos, I need to warn you that as an ancient demon, swearing is not a good habit. So, this is a warning. Charles slammed his fist at the flame demon. Yen demon's subconscious blocking. After a loud boom sound, Yen devil let out a heart-rending roar. One of his arms was smashed abruptly by Charles. The power of Bai Yin Da Chao to deal with the Yen devil can be said to have no pressure. Seeing that his #1 battle would be severely damaged by Charles, Mephitos was also angry. He raised a hand, and the power of the hell dimension continued to gather. When he pointed his hand at Charles, a terrifying black death light shot out. Such a light is enough to kill thousands of demons in an instant. Or even wipe out a city with a population of 1 million on Earth. This is the purest use of black magic. In the face of such an attack, the corners of Charles's mouth slightly provoked. As he said himself, he couldn't move, and let the black death light hit him. Mephitos seemed to have foreseen Charles's death. Even Odin didn't dare to face himself so much. But Mephitos was wrong. Charles bathed in the black death light, unmoved. Energy absorption. This ability constantly absorbs evil energy from Mephitos. Charles felt that if it was the Black Emperor Sebastian, he would definitely not be able to absorb energy as unscrupulously as himself. Mephitos in the hell dimension is, after all, a single universe level. No matter how powerful an ability is, there should be an upper limit. For example, Black Emperor Sebastian is the strength of the planet level superior. Then, he can absorb the attacks of the Heavenly Father, even if it is the limit. In the face of the words of an old Heavenly Father like Odin, he will still be killed. In the face of the monolithic universe-level Mephitos, he can only lead the neck to be killed. Charles, on the other hand, has a silver supermodel, and he is now at the level of a single universe. Mephitos' attack simply could not reach the upper limit of the ability of energy absorption. At the very least, it takes the power of the Phoenix, the power of Chaos, or the Infinity Gauntlet Thanos to exceed the threshold. Episode 94. At first, Mephitos behaved unavoidably towards Charles, like looking at an idiot. But as the master of the hellish dimension, Mephitos was full of demonic cunning in his bones, and it only took him a short time before he realized that something was wrong. Around Charles's body, covering the surface of the skin, there seemed to be a strange force field. This force field is constantly absorbing black dead light. Mephitos felt that his attack was not like hitting an entity, but like attacking a cosmic black hole. So, Mephitos made the same decision as Odin and stopped the attack. Now it was Charles's turn to be dissatisfied. Well, I've just started at the beginning, can't you? You hell dimension demon god is a bit illusory. Mephitos, don't forget our deal. Charles complained. Mephitos' expression stiffened. Who made a deal with you? But when he heard Charles's second words, okay, prodded. Because that's what Charles said in the second sentence. You don't want your demons to die either. The Secret thought that there would be a century war, which he thought would eventually become a one-sided oppression. Finally, when Charles felt close to the upper limit of energy absorption, he let Morphedos go. He couldn't beat Mephitos anyway. In the Hell dimension, Mephitos is still a little stronger, but the strength is very limited. Charles has energy absorption, and Mephitos can't hurt Charles. Charles couldn't hurt Mephitos either. If he really fights desperately, in the end, it is estimated that Charles looks like he was beaten badly, but in fact he was not injured. Mephitos looks like nothing to lose, but he will have a lot to lose. I believe that after this battle, Mephitos will learn to behave. After leaving the Hell dimension and returning to school, Charles was going to strengthen a wave of psychic power, but when he took out his mobile phone, he saw Jessica looking for a lot of text messages for himself. When he was in the universe, the mobile phone naturally had no signal. So Jessica called him and couldn't get through at all. After returning to Earth, Charles was busy dealing with Mephitos again, running to the Hell dimension, but there was still no signal. Jessica had to contact Charles via text. Charles returned to Jessica with a right away. Call a detective agency. Jessica saw the reply on her phone, and her mood suddenly improved. She was worried about death. At first, Charles didn't contact himself. She thought Charles was busy and didn't bother Charles. After all, at that time I had just found the people behind the death threats and were looking for evidence. Later, I called Charles and found that Charles could not be contacted. Because knowing that Charles is a mutant. She also thought something had happened to Charles. Because Stryker's research on mutants was exposed before, the world really recognized mutants. After the establishment of the Mutant Independent Kingdom, news about mutants being persecuted and used for research appears frequently. While rescuing mutants, Eric publishes video materials from research institutions in order to gain the advantage of public opinion. Seeing these news, Jessica was even more worried about Charles. So she texted a lot today. She hasn't used this feature for a long time. I never thought about the text messages I sent in the morning, but I got a reply in the evening. Charles will be there soon. Jessica thought to herself, feeling that she should change her clothes. What should she change? It is said that Xiao Beixing is newlywed. Do you want to change into that nightclub dancer's outfit? Jessica's cheeks flushed. It was for a case that she needed to dress up as a dancer to buy it. It's so criminal. However, Jessica thought so, or was ready to change into that dress. Charles must like it. Who knew that she changed halfway? There was movement in the room, and Charles came to the detective agency. Charles and Jessica looked at each other. At this time, Jessica is like a delicious Wellington steak, so tempting. The smell of hormones permeated the room. Read violent novels, just go to Feilu Fiction Network. Jessica didn't expect it and pounced on Charles. After the War of the Century, Charles holds Jessica and tells her about his recent legend. For example, he occupies a planet formed by the head of a celestial god. Also, he cleaned up the infernal demon Mephitos. These words, if they were said by someone else, Jessica must have thought it was a fantasy, but since it was Charles who said it, it must be true. I'll take it to the void tomorrow to see. Charles hugged Jessica and said, the rainbow bridge of the destiny gauntlet that can move with individuals. But at most, you can only bring one person. Good. Jessica leaned against Charles's chest and made kitten-like sounds. Suddenly, she raised her head, and her eyes were like war again. Charles understood when he saw this look. I still want to fight, right? Who is afraid of whom? However, the sudden ringing of mobile phones broke the atmosphere. The ringtones are heavy metal rock music. It was Jessica's cell phone, and after she clicked to answer it, it was actually Daredevil Matt Murdock who was contacting her. Matt, I'm busy right now. I didn't want to join your small group. My boyfriend told me that responsibility and power are equal, and that although I have the ability, I still have to worry about $800 a month in rent. Well, okay, get in touch tomorrow. I hope you and Luke have a good harvest. Jessica hangs up the phone and starts fighting Charles again. After this wave of fighting is over, Jessica fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, Charles ordered takeout. Over breakfast, Jessica talked about Matt and Luke from yesterday night. Matt, of course, is Lawyer Ma and the vigilante daredevil of Hell's Kitchen. As for Luke, Harlem's vigilante Luke Cage. Luke Cage runs a bar. He was like a hub for news. Because recently there was a kind of monster that sucked human blood in New York, and those monsters were active in the sewers. They sucked human blood and transformed the sucked people into similar monsters. This is no longer a problem that can be dealt with alone. So Luke Cage formed the League of Defenders. As the name suggests, it is to defend their homeland. The first members of the League of Defenders were Luke Cage, Lawyer Ma, and Jessica. Jessica didn't want to do such boring things. However, the mother-in-law in the Chinese restaurant in Hell's Kitchen was bitten to death by a monster. This apparently annoyed Jessica. Jessica's principle is, you are bad for me, but if you provoke me, you will definitely break your bones. Episode 95. Hi Jessica, I smelled you far away and feel that you are in a good mood today. A voice came from behind. Listen to what this is saying. You can smell the smell from far away, and you can feel that you are in a good mood. Charles didn't have to look back to know that it was Lawyer Ma who was coming. After Matt's blind cane touched Charles's chair, he smiled and put it away, saying, Sir, may I sit here? Of course it's fine, Murdoch, we've actually met. Charles laughed. Matt was slightly stunned, and then he could tell from Charles's voice when he had seen Charles. In the world of American comics, Daredevil Matt's superpower is mainly radar-like senses. In fact, it's hard to say whether this is a superpower or not. 360, because the stick also has such an ability. Matt's strength stems from his fighting ability. He has the fighting ability that can be called the ceiling of a human being, as well as his memory and intelligence. Matt comes into contact with an unknown number of people every day. Anyone he has come into contact with, Matt can recall it with a strong memory. Matt sat down and said, You caused me a big trouble last time. Oh, what are you talking about? Jessica was curious about their words. It's nothing, just brought a case to Murdoch's lawyer, and now it seems that the case is not going well. Charles helped Jessica peel a tea egg. The Chinese cuisine in Hell's Kitchen is a disaster. However, there is one thing to say, the breakfast in the restaurant is still good. Matt asked the waiter for a basket of steamed dumplings, a basket of stew wheat, and a glass of bean juice. I heard what Charles said didn't go well. He shrugged his shoulders helplessly. The evidence of bribery using the account of United Construction Company was finally found only to Leland, the chief accountant of United Construction Company. However, Leland fell to his death that night. The chain of evidence was broken from Leland, and in the end, it was impossible to investigate. And Matt also understands that even if the investigation continues, it is impossible to bring down Wilson Fisk. That was New York's famous underground emperor, Gene He. Trying to use a bribe evidence to deal with Gene He is a fool's dream. Kim is not a bad disease growing in New York, but he is like a chronic disease, at least for a short time, it will not cause major trouble. There's a big problem in the sewers of New York right now, and in medical terms, it's a fast-growing malignancy. Matt said. Now the focus of the Defenders Alliance is to deal with that kind of blood-sucking monster. When Matt and Jessica described the monster's characteristics, Charles frowned. You're talking about vampires? That's right, they're like the vampires in the story. Jessica nodded. Matt said, but those guys are crazy, constantly causing attacks, turning victims into blood-sucking monsters. Matt heard Jessica say that Charles is a mutant, so he wants to draw Charles into the Defenders League as well. But Charles had no interest in this kind of non-mainstream community team. Stick to rotten, from the beginning to the end. After Matt leaves ruefully, Charles is rewarded with a bronze chest. After opening, there is a snake charm. Is this thing of any use? The answer is no. So, Charles gave Jessica the serpent charm, which has the ability to be invisible. It can be regarded as further enhancing Jessica. Charles, you say it can be stealthy? Jessica looked at the snake charm in her hand, very curious, is this a magic item? Charles said, how could I lie to you, but we can test the effect in another place, such as the Void Land. Yesterday night, Charles promised to take her to the Void. Anyway, the vampire thing, just let Matt and Luke Cage go into trouble. Back in his heart clinic, Charles grabbed Jessica's waist, and as soon as his mind moved, the Rainbow Bridge appeared out of thin air. The next moment, the two of them disappeared from the same place, without a trace. The land of nothingness, now courage rules this place. The Tyvan group was also changed to the Xavier group. The Xavier group was divided into two groups by bravery, one to ensure the safety and order of the Void, and the original Marauders were also incorporated into it. The other is to rebuild the Void Land according to Charles's plan. Yongdu could not trust the people of the original Tyvan group, and he asked the second officer Kraglin to lead them. Even among the Marauders, Kraglin is the most loyal to himself. Who is faithful to themselves? Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network, courage can still be distinguished. When Jessica followed Charles to the Void, she was shocked and speechless. It's really a planet. Charles now rules the place. It's incredible. If she took the spaceship to observe the Void Land from a distance, it would be even more shocking. Charles took Jessica's hand and said, I'll take you to see the largest museum in the universe, it will be even more eye-opening. It's evening again on Earth. Luke Cage found that Jessica could no longer be contacted, and couldn't help but feel a little depressed. Maybe the Defenders Alliance is fine for the two of us, Luke Cage said to Matt on the side. Anyway, except for the first day, every evening was he and Matt on a mission. Today, I can't even get through the phone. Are you calling a number that is not in the service area? Oh my god, how many years had he not heard that? Is there a place in New York that is not in the service area? 1.5. Actually, we can add a little more people in. Matt, who was wearing a Daredevil uniform, said. You're talking about Jessica's boyfriend, the magical mutant? Matt shook his head. He is reluctant to join the Defenders Alliance. People are very unfriendly to mutants. Presumably he is the same for humans. Luke Cage didn't deny what Matt said. He saw the information sent by the Mutant Independent Kingdom, the military and research institutions, and did a lot of terrible things to the mutants. I'm talking about a block away, where someone is dealing with vampires. Now, Steve is being attacked by 2 vampires. He didn't know what it was. But suddenly rushing up and biting, it is always not a good thing. You can first convince and then say. Episode 96. Vampires have great speed and strength, and they are far more powerful than normal humans. If an ordinary gangster is targeted by a vampire, even if there is only one vampire, it will be torn apart by the vampire. However, these 2 vampires were not particularly lucky. Met Captain America Steve. Steve wandered around Eagle Sauce to really get to know the country he fought for. The results he got made him very confused. It reminded Steve of what Natasha had told herself, an ex had opened a psychology clinic in Hell's Kitchen. He might need a psychiatrist. Coming to the place of Hell's Kitchen, Steve understood why these 8 blocks were places where Satan shook his head when he saw it. At this time, the 2 guys who didn't know if they were addicts made Steve very depressed. He punched one of them in the head. Such a force can cause a minor concussion. Steve's power control is very good, which can incapacitate people without killing him. 27. The result was that the vampire got up from the ground and continued to attack him regardless of the problem. Fuck, Team America scolded angrily. Hey, man, I thought Captain America wouldn't swear. Luke Cage came out of the shadow of the street lamp and said. Daredevil on the side pouted, the propaganda you see, that's just what the White House wants you to see, makes sense. Luke Cage nodded, then pulled out the matching gun on his waist and shot each of the 2 vampires. Steve frowned when he saw this. Although he did not stop Luke Cage, he was somewhat unhappy in his heart. Steve wasn't the Virgin, and he didn't know how many people he killed during the war. But treating enemies is not the same as treating ordinary people. The enemy should be solved by thunder means, leaving no hidden dangers. Because even the slightest trace of mercy is a fatal disaster for his comrades. But we should be kind to ordinary people. Even those who make mistakes may be worth saving. At the very least, it should not be easily deprived of life until the law decides. You shouldn't have killed them, Steve said, picking up his motorcycle. Dude, it looks like you haven't figured out the situation yet. These guys can't be considered human anymore. Luke Cage pouted at the corpse on the ground. Steve looked puzzled, and saw that the body that had been shot to the end was now turning into ashes and gradually disappearing. This made Steve's eyes instantly become solemn. Daredevil explained in a timely manner, these guys are afraid of silver, garlic and ultraviolet light, and Luke's pistol has been replaced with silver bullets to kill them with one hit, like a vampire? Steve said. Daredevil nodded, almost, but we prefer to call them vampire monsters, because they are not as smart as the vampires in mythology. Steve's professional experience made him feel that these vampire monsters were a big problem. He decided to get to know Luke Cage and Matt. Are you 2 New York's vigilantes? You can call me Divine Man, he's called Daredevil. Luke Cage said. Steve couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. Sounds like a party of the leotard heroes of the 80s. Come on man, you were still freezing in the ice in the 80s, and in fact that one was not popular in the 80s. Luke Cage seems to be a self-cook, which seems to be the traditional performance of opening a bar. Hearing the duo's analysis of the current situation, Steve decided to join them for the time being. Not to join the so-called coalition of defenders. It's just a matter of dealing with blood-sucking monsters. Seriously, since leaving the Avengers, Steve doesn't have any fondness for the so-called alliances. Matt tells them mission tonight, and they will enter a sewer to search for the nest of the vampire monster. It's better to catch them all. Because coming up with a solution is really corny. The speed at which they kill vampire monsters is far less than the conversion speed of these guys. Steve took out the shield in his backpack and followed Luke Cage and Matt. Haven't you thought about asking the official for help? Steve asked. Dude, Matt is a lawyer, and he immediately went to the Disaster Control Agency. The disaster control agency didn't seem to take it seriously, sending up to 20 agents to investigate. This is New York, the financial center of Eagle Sauce. 20 agents, that's not as good as a campus gang at a community school, Luke Cage complained. Steve thought of S.H.I.E.L.D. before him. The disaster control agency is not even as good as S.H.I.E.L.D., read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. No matter how many bad things Nick Fury does, at least the intentions are good. The disaster control agency is like a bureaucracy through and through. Without much fanfare to deal with vampire monsters, to put it bluntly, it is a fear of causing panic, and once it causes unrest in New York, the disaster control agency is unwilling to take on this responsibility. In other words, even if the vampire monsters are rampant in New York. Nor is that the responsibility of the disaster control authority. Matt noticed Steve's silence and said, "Looks like you figured it out, sometimes we're on our own. Indeed, the only thing we can rely on is ourselves." Steve took a deep breath. Since the disaster control agency has this attitude, the New York Police Department needs no question. In this kind of supernatural event on the other side, ordinary police officers have no experience and no equipment, and even if they intervene, the casualties will be very large. As for asking Iron Man for help? Steve is dozens of years older than Tony, why go to Tony if he can handle it himself? I know someone who might find it easier for us to find the vampire monster's lair if he is willing to help. Steve 540 thought of Charles. That's the strongest brain on Earth. Luke Cage and Matt didn't know who he was talking about. When they hear that Captain America Steve knows someone, the two think of some ancient and powerful existence. I don't know if it's because the aura is too strong, and the search this night still found nothing. The sewers throughout New York are intricately intricate, like an underground kingdom. Finding the lair of a blood-sucking monster from inside feels like finding a needle in a haystack. Everyone could only expect someone Steve knew. As they left the sewers, a black man in a trench coat and sunglasses stared at them across the street. He is known as the vampire hunter Blade Warrior. The vampires in this city had been completely eliminated by him 25 years ago. More precisely, 25 years ago, he killed the vampire ancestor Drake. All the vampires in the world disappeared, except for himself as a daywalker. He has been hiding in the shadows, observing everything in this world. Until recently, vampires appeared again in New York. The Blade Warrior didn't understand what was causing this. So he did not rashly expose his existence. He is still dormant. These vigilantes in New York may be able to force out the guys behind the scenes. Episode 97, Charles returns to Hell's Kitchen from the void. Because of the magic of phantom transfiguration, he shuttled back and forth between the psychological clinic and Xavier's Genius Junior School, and there was no inconvenience. He also bought a detached villa in Hell's Kitchen. It's a scarce property in Hell's Kitchen. Speaking of which, this villa originally belonged to the boss of the Hammerhead gang. However, the Hammer was killed. The house was auctioned by Charles at a high price, and at first there was a man who wanted to compete with him. The problem sits on the wealth of the Tower Resort and Osborne. Charles is like Tony's big doggy. He doesn't care about money at all. The problem of being able to settle it with money is not a problem. After some price increase, the person who competed died down. In fact, unless you have a certain amount of power or strength. Otherwise, it is definitely not a knowing choice for rich people to live in Hell's Kitchen. Magic cleans up the house, and Charles flashes to Texas, ready to take Wanda and Quicksilver to Hell's Kitchen. At this point, Steve was wearing a cap, and he found Matt Murdock. At the end of yesterday evening, the three had already disclosed their identities to each other. Of course, Steve didn't have much to make public. The famous Captain America, even a child can tell 3 or 2 Steve's heroic deeds. "Murdock, do you lawyers all work so late?" Steve, who had obviously waited for a while, complained. Matt smiled. It's Hell's Kitchen, and they need a competent detective, better than a lawyer. What he meant was that the Night Devil vigilante was his job. Lawyer. It's just a mixed meal. Virginian, who was one step away from Matt, couldn't help but complain loudly when he heard this. That also requires a competent detective, and there is no such person in Hell's Kitchen. Guess what I met when I came, a robber. Matt advised him not to get so excited. It's nothing unusual about this kind of rotten thing every day in Hell's Kitchen. Fergie looked loveless. The one who was robbed is me, damn it. I asked the detective on the side of the road for help, that bastard, right? It was the old Jack who actually asked if I needed a gun. He also told me that the gun shop at the intersection of West Avenue was opened by his brother-in-law, and if his name was mentioned, he could get a 9.5% discount. Steve couldn't help but pat him on the shoulder. In Hell's Kitchen, you might really need a gun. Fergie subconsciously looked at Steve, he thought it was a customer. In the Hell's Kitchen, this damn place. The law firm handles more disputes every month than the old drunkard at the end of the street who has less than half of his teeth left and his speech leaks. Because the son of the old drunkard is the third leader of the Maubert gang. But when Fergie saw Steve's appearance, he couldn't help but be stunned, and then exclaimed, "Captain America, oh my god, you're Captain America Steve Rogers. Matt, we actually met the legend." But Fergie's train of thought was strange, and after he was surprised, he thought of something. Does Captain Rogers also need to find a lawyer in Hell's Kitchen? Matt handed the briefcase to Fergie and said, "I went out with Captain Rogers, there is a case information in the bag, you can take a look at it first." "Oh, wait. Captain Rogers, can you sign for me?" Fergie took out his signature pen. Steve took the pen and asked with a smile, "Where do you need me to check in?" "Right here, just above the chest of the suit. I'm going to a high school reunion tonight, and this signature will surely surprise them." "Leave the law firm." Steve told Matt that they were going to find someone to help. If that man was willing to make a move, it would no longer be difficult for them to find the lair of the blood-sucking monster. The two walked through the streets of Hell's Kitchen. After turning a corner, Matt felt strange in his heart. How can there be a bad premonition? Isn't this the street where Jessica's detective agency is located? As soon as Charles placed the twins' telepathic abilities, noticed that someone had arrived outside the psychiatric clinic. Team America and Lawyer Ma, how did these two get together? Charles muttered. Then with a spell of transfiguration, he returned to his clinic. Knock knock knock, read violent novels, just go to Felu Novel Network. Only then did he hear a knock on the door. "Please come in." Charles poured himself a cappuccino and looked at the two who walked in. "Captain Rogers, and Lawyer Murdoch, I don't know what happened to you. The vampire monster that appeared in the sewers of New York, I hope you can help us." Steve was straight to the point. "I know you have a lot of complaints about us, and what Fury did, I am also very upset. But New York has tens of millions of people, and there are a lot of mutants living here, and we can agree on this. You're looking for the lair of those blood-sucking monsters?" Charles said. "He's analyzing whether to help. If you refuse Steve and choose to rot, you will only have a silver chest at most. What if it helps? It doesn't seem to get anything either." "Well, those guys are afraid of silverware, garlic and ultraviolet light, and the weakness is very obvious. When we find their nests, we can use high-power ultraviolet lamps to kill them," Matt interjected. He had previously asked Charles to join the Defenders, but Charles refused. "Maybe it's because I'm too greedy. This is Professor X among mutants." On the way, Matt learned Charles's identity from Steve. Like Eric, the mutant-independent kingdom of Magneto, one of the most powerful mutants in the world, Li Qian's. "I can help, but I have a request. I'll use my way to turn you into mutants." Charles crossed his hands on his chin, a decision he made after thinking about it. Put the 5-5 American team, as well as Daredevil Matt, and the Divine Power Man Luke Cage into the mutant chariot. He solved the crisis of the Sentinel robot though. But I don't know why, Charles still has a sense of crisis in his heart. He didn't know where this sense of crisis came from. However, the multiverse of the American comic world, there are often fierce people from other universes fighting across the universe. For example, in What If, Ultron has destroyed countless universes. In case there is a Ninglu-level Sentinel robot, it is not impossible to run to this universe to deal with mutants. Grow the mutant chariots. The payoff is obviously greater than a silver chest. Episode 98, Make Them Mutants? Steve didn't expect Charles to have such an ability. It seems that the former S.H.I.E.L.D. still knows nothing about X. Nick Fury thought he was in control, how ridiculous it should be in Charles's eyes. "I need to think about it." Steve thought for a moment, then said. Matt unexpectedly did not refuse. "Being a vigilante in Hell's Kitchen often makes me feel powerless. In the face of bad people, it seems that I have never been strong enough." Matt thought of Mrs. Gao of the White Noodle Factory. A vicious bad guy. "I should have caught him, but failed. Mrs. Gao is still at large, and has even made a comeback, and I don't know how many people have been hurt by her. If the mutant's ability can do a better job of protecting justice, Matt doesn't mind becoming a mutant. He was already blind anyway. There is always no more to lose than to gain." Charles nodded and said, "No problem, this time tomorrow, I hope the Rogers battle can be considered. Also tomorrow, I'll make you a mutant. Also, you need a weapons expert before you can deal with those blood-sucking monsters." Cha 300 less gave them a name. Frank Custer. He has another name, the Punisher. Of course. At this point, Steve and Matt did not know that Frank was a fierce guy. Today, Frank is a construction worker in downtown Manhattan. 6 months earlier, Frank had solved locomotive crews in suburban Alabama, white powder gangs in Mexico, and Irish gangs at JFK. He returned to New York and wanted to live a normal life. At that time, New York, which was being rebuilt, needed a large number of construction workers. A construction worker? Steve wondered. What's so strange about this? Most vigilantes have a job. For example, Matt is a lawyer and Luke Cage is a bar owner. Gwen is a college student. Charles added mentally. Anyway, no one pays a salary, so you still have to find a way to earn money and eat yourself. Well, not for the money yourself. He just loves it. Steve said, I don't mean that. If he's a construction worker, he should be very powerful, superpower-wise. Gee, is this a natural captain? The assessment of the strength of the players has already begun. Charles shrugged his shoulders and said, You'll know this when you see him, I hope you can get by. Both did not take Charles's words seriously. What is Hope to be able to deal with? After leaving Hell's Kitchen, they came to the Lower East Side on Manhattan Island. The once bustling East Houston Street. This place was destroyed by the Chitauri people more ruthlessly, and several shells happened to fall here. So, there is still nearly a third of East Houston Street being rebuilt. Steve's face is very well known, even if he wears a cape and sunglasses. If he communicates carefully with people, he will inevitably be recognized. Matt had to walk inside the construction site alone. Hey man, this is a construction site, not a place for blind people. The construction site security guard saw Matt with a blind cane and quickly prevented him from entering. Hello, I'm looking for a construction worker. Matt explained with a smile. The security guard said impatiently, If you are looking for someone, you can call him to inform him. I am a security guard, not a herald. To be precise, I am a lawyer. I need to find one of your workers to find out about the situation. If there is no way, then I can only contact your project leader. Matt took out the business card he had with him and handed it over. The security guard glanced at Nelson Murdoch LLP. Although I haven't heard of it. But if Matt goes to the person in charge of the project for a little thing, he will inevitably be harshly criticized in the end. Putting the business card, CIBF, in his jacket pocket, the security guard asked, Who are you looking for? I'll help you inform him. Frank Custer. You're looking for him, he's a good worker, he just doesn't fit in. The security guard said casually as he left. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. Matt nodded slightly, thinking that a good worker should be easier to deal with. It seems that Charles's worries are completely superfluous. After a while, Frank, wearing a dark blue overalls, followed the security guard to this side. Jason said you were looking for me? Are you a lawyer? I guess I don't have any lawsuits. Frank took off his gloves and looked at Matt and said. I think we can take a step to speak. In the face of Frank's aggressive inquiry, Matt said. That's exactly what I mean. Frank nodded. Outside the construction site, behind a secluded new building. It's not finished yet, so there is basically no one. Can we talk? Frank glanced around and found at least 7 things that could be used as weapons. If you can, a blind cane in the hands of a blind lawyer is also good. Of course, these are basically not used. He could break the thin neck with just 2 hands. My name is Matt Murdoch, and I have a friend who asked me to come to you. What are you looking for me for? Frank's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a dangerous glow. After avenging his wife and daughter, Frank just wants to live a peaceful and ordinary life. If those mercenaries had found him again, he would have caused the other party to die a very miserable death. A trouble, need your help, Charles said you are very powerful. Scold. Frank could determine that the blind lawyer was the mercenaries. He slammed his punch at Matt. Matt subconsciously turned his head and dodged this fierce punch. Frank couldn't help but frown. Hell, a blind man has such a sensitive reaction. Matt wanted to speak, but Frank didn't give him a chance, and his dense fists kept smashing into him. Matt had to fight back with the blind cane in his hand. Bang! He knocked a stick on Frank's knee, and as a normal person, he would be knocked down on one knee by the stick. Frank suffered, but did not give up on the attack. With an unexpected punch, he knocked off Matt's sunglasses. Frank saw the gray-white eyes behind Matt's sunglasses, and raised his eyebrows, but he didn't expect to be really blind. At this time, Steve, who came over, saw the two who were fighting. I thought you were a lawyer and very good at communicating with people. Steve said. Matt was depressed for a moment. He was just good at communicating with judges, not that he was good at communicating with criminals. Also, where did this named Frank come from with such hostility? Captain America Steve Rogers? Frank tilted his head slightly and muttered after seeing Steve. Episode 99. Frank was sure that Team America Steve wouldn't be one of those mercenaries. He put away his hostility and went to a tavern with Steve. In the morning, there were no people in the tavern. Frank is a regular customer here, and he asks for 3 glasses of the strongest whiskey. After finding a corner seat and sitting down, Frank said, "As you can see, I am a construction worker. I don't know what the famous Captain America is looking for me. Charles says you're a weapons expert and we need you to deal with the vampire monsters of New York." Steve was straight to the point. "By the way, tell Frank about the blood-sucking monsters in the sewers." Frank still doesn't want to break the existing peaceful life. "I think I need to think about it." Frank drank all the wine and put down a bill, which was regarded as rejecting Steve and the two. "Why are the people Charles recommending as difficult as him?" Matt grumbled as he took a sip of wine. "Ahem, this whiskey is spicy choking." Steve took a sip and felt pretty good. They used to fight on the European continent and loved this high-altitude whiskey. Charles gave Steve and Matt the task of persuading the Punisher. He himself came to Wakanda, or the current mutant independent kingdom. The kingdom has taken on a new look, and now that thousands of mutants have settled here, the kingdom has begun to get on track. Formerly a mutant protection organization in Louisiana, it is now primarily responsible for receiving mutants. They rescue mutants from all over the world. Bring the mutants back here. The security of the mutant independent kingdom is mainly responsible for the doppelganger. He alone can be divided into hundreds or thousands. On your own, you can maintain law and order. If you can't handle things well, you can ask Deathwoman, Toadman, and others to help. As for Eric the Magneto and Raven the Witch, they have to deal with diplomacy, which is more troublesome. "Charles, it's great that you can come here. I've been dying of a headache lately." After Eric saw Charles, he couldn't help but vomit. The mutant independent kingdom was the most successful thing he had ever done in his life. However, it also keeps him extremely busy. If it's just busy, there are many things that can't be solved by being busy. For example, not long ago, Thunderbird, Eclipse Marcos and others, they rescued dozens of studied mutants in a special hospital in Galactus. Several guards were killed in the process. The Galactus harshly condemned the mutant independent kingdom diplomatically, and many countries followed suit, which caused Eric a great headache. "Before, I could ignore them, or I could attack their freighters as a warning," Eric said. "But now I have a country where thousands of mutants need protection. If I did, it would break the tranquility of the present. If I don't do anything, they may ban the export of all kinds of necessities to the mutant independent kingdom. Food is not a big problem, but we rely on imports for medicines, clothes, and resources that are not available here." Ruewen on the side smiled bitterly. "If we don't respond to this, not only these countries will isolate us in the future, but the whole world will isolate us. So Eric, what are you going to do?" Charles came to the mutant independent kingdom to find some mutant criminals and deprive them of their abilities. But now there is no rush for that. "Charles, I think it's good for you to be the leader of the mutants. I obviously don't fit in this position." Eric stared into Charles's eyes, ready to shake off the responsibility. Previously, he led mutant struggles. However, when it comes to really running a country, there are many things that give Eric a headache. So, if Charles is willing to take over this responsibility, he will not hesitate to give up. Charles hurriedly shook his head in refusal. "Just kidding, who loves to do such a hard job, he doesn't want to do it anyway." Congratulations to the host for successfully swinging and obtaining a bronze treasure chest. The sound of a rotten system ringing in Charles's head. The chest was temporarily stored in a storage ring, and Charles was in no hurry to open it. "Eric, since you created the mutant independent kingdom, it is your responsibility to take care of it. You don't want to have a mutant child in the future, think you're a mediocre leader," Charles said. "Well, it looks like you're really different from before, so what do you think I should do with Galactus? International diplomacy is not just about using force, you can try to bring them to their knees economically. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network." Charles gave Eric an idea. "You mean vibranium?" The previous countries here never traded vibranium, a magical metal with endless possibilities. A hesitant look appeared on Eric's face. "I even suspect now that the Galactus unites many countries with diplomatic condemnation for the purpose of vibranium here. If I take out vibranium, it proves that the mutant independent kingdom has yielded to them. Or rather, we fell into their trap." Charles shook his head and said, "I'm not talking about vibranium, there are other things besides vibranium that have the same effect." Saying that, he took out some seeds, which were taken from the Voidlands Museum. Seeds of the flower of Krakow. In the original X-Room, the flowers of Krakow are special plants on the island of Krakow. However, in this American comic world, Charles did not discover the existence of Krakow Island. The flower of Krakow, also one of the collector's collection. this flower can be made into medicine. Through different cultivation techniques, the flower of Krakow can make various psychotropic drugs, can make the strongest antibiotics, and can cure cancer. These 3 effects alone are enough to go crazy all over the world. Raven learned the importance of the flower of Krakow faster than Eric. The mutant independent kingdom can process the flower of Krakow into a medicine and sell it worldwide. This can both solve the problem of funding the independent kingdom of mutants. It can also solve current diplomatic problems. In the face of diplomatic condemnation like the Galactic chicken, the mutant independent kingdom can choose to refuse to sell medicines, and the Galactic chicken has to take its proud head. The same is true for countries that covet vibranium. Charles, I know that mutants can do without me, but not without you. Eric learned the value of the flower of Krakow, and excitedly gave Charles a hug. The problem that has plagued him for a long time can be regarded as a solution. When it became clear that Charles needed mutant prisoners, Eric personally took him to the prison. Today's mutant prison has 7 or 8 mutants. Mutants are just as bad guys. Even, with their own abilities, lawless mutants are far more numerous than humans. Episode 100, returning to New York from the mutant independent kingdom, Charles gained several decent abilities. In addition to the ability, Eric also discussed something with Charles, and he was going to send some students and teachers to Xavier Gifted Junior School. Correspondingly, Charles also has to arrange some exchange students and teachers to mutate the independent kingdom. Mutant children, representing the future of mutants. In terms of school experience, even 100 Erics are not as good as Charles. Eric hadn't taken this seriously before. As a complete hawk, if you are not convinced, you will be done. Now to manage a thriving country, education becomes very important. He has had people build schools. But experience is not something that can be accumulated in a moment. Even if Charles doesn't come to 227 him today, Eric is ready to go to Charles. Charles agreed. Next, Steve, Matt and Luke Cage approached Charles, and after thinking about it, agreed to Charles's request. It's okay to be a mutant, anyway, a lot of people in Harlem call me a freak. But there is one point, I don't want to really become a monster, that's the kind. You are called alienated mutants. Because I open a bar, many girls like my type, and we can often have some super friendship exchanges. I don't want to be weird and deprive me of the happiest things. That's right, it's the happiest thing, and fighting evil can only be counted as the second happiest thing, Luke Cage chattered. Charles didn't expect Luke Cage to be a talker, and simply waved his hand and integrated a light mass into his body. The epsilon level ability that alienates the body, Charles also has 2 in his hands. Of course, such abilities will not give Luke Cage them. Charles just put the photophore in the storage ring to teach the extremists against mutants a lesson. As the photophore integration ended, Luke Cage looked at the changes in his body. After finding that nothing had changed, he was relieved. So, I'm a mutant now? What are my variant abilities? Luke Cage asked. You can try clapping hard with both hands. Like applause? Luke Cage said while giving a high five. Violent sound waves burst out of the hand. Bang! 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 I saw that the glass in the room shattered. Oh by Ka! This is amazing, Luke Cage was stunned by the self-inflicted effect. Even Steve exclaimed, the ability of mutants, it's really amazing. Humans are understandably fearful of mutants. In addition to fear, there is more jealousy, and this jealousy can turn people into demons. Charles echoed Steve's words. Steve thought about it carefully and couldn't help but nod. Indeed, jealousy can turn people into hideous devils. Charles used the magic that was restored to his original form, and all the damage caused by Luke Cage was gone. Luke Cage saw this and said sincerely, if there is a choice, I like this ability. Although I'm a black man, one thing is that black people in Harlem always fight when they get drunk, and I don't know how many of these things I solve every month. If I had the ability, I could quickly restore my bar. Luke Cage's mouth was like Gatling, and when it was opened, it chattered. With a wave of his finger, Charles simply blocked out his voice. Facing the suddenly quiet world, the corners of Steve's mouth raised, and he gave Charles a thumbs up. Charles gave another mutant ability to Lawyer Ma. Speaking of which, this ability comes from an acquaintance. The hiding of the Louisiana Mutant Protection Organization, this guy defected to the Hellfire Club in the original book, Gifted. In this world, he is in the independent kingdom of mutants and wants to use his ability to smuggle vibranium. As a result, he was caught by Eric. Matt gets the ability to mutate stealth, and he disappears without a trace in a flash. Very capable, it's a pity that you can't see. Steve regretted, and then said with anticipation, I kind of expect the mutant ability you gave me, that will definitely surprise you. Charles gifted the mutant ability to Steve. Steve's abilities are barrier and shield, and this ability is Dr. Reyes's. After all, injected with super soldier serum Steve, the combat effectiveness is already good. The ability to mutate the shield. The icing on the cake for Steve. Just as the three were familiar with their abilities, Frank pushed the door in from outside. Read violent novels, just go to Felu Fiction Network. Steve and Matt were both taken aback when they saw him. Because Frank had already rejected them yesterday. Frank didn't care about their surprise. He looked at Charles sitting behind the desk and said, "I guess you're Charles, right? Hey man, how did you find us?" Steve wondered. Frank didn't want to answer such a stupid question. He had seen Matt's business card. Now that you know your identity, it is simply easy to grasp their whereabouts on Manhattan Island. If you change cars next time, it may be a little more difficult to find. Since it was the American team who asked himself, Frank gave him some face. "Charles, I'll call you Charles, I choose to join you in dealing with those blood-sucking monsters," Frank said solemnly. He did turn down both Steve yesterday. However, a new coworker named Donnie on his construction site, Frank liked the young man. It's not a friend. He basically doesn't make friends. It is a worker from 2.3 on the construction site. Yesterday night, Downey was killed by a vampire monster, in front of Frank. Frank took out the vampire monster, but failed to save Donnie. This provoked Frank's anger. "I think that I have to kill all the blood-sucking monsters in New York, so that it can be regarded as revenge." Charles told him about the mutants. Frank rejected the offer. He just has to deal with vampire monsters, not to become a mutant, which are two different things. Charles also did not force Frank. He is using these people to expand the mutant chariot. If the gains outweigh the losses, it's not good. Besides, there won't necessarily be new Sentinel robots, it's just a precautionary plan now.